as my name is Chuck Brooks. I'm with CNS Engineers. For those of you that don't know, we were the designers of record of the new Lewis County Jefferson Community College educational facility being constructed up there on East Road near the Maple Ridge Community Center. From a big picture standpoint, it's been a really fun project to be involved in. It's been a very fast-paced project. I know that for a lot of you, the project began some 3 years ago. For us, it really started back in May. There's been a lot of progress that's been made to date, and I think what you'll see in the presentation is everybody on the project team has worked together very well, and we've made some very good progress so far. Basic agenda, I tried to keep it relatively short. I want to leave it open for questions, but I'm going to go over the project chronology, basically how we started and from where we started from and how we got to where we are. We'll talk a little bit about construction contracts. We will review some of the ongoing project activities, talk about the construction schedule, and then leave it open for questions. That might be a little difficult for some people to read, but basically back on May 5th, Saturday, Cinco de Mayo, is when we had our project kickoff at the Maple Ridge Center. CNS was there, as was Lewis County, Jefferson Community College, the Cornell Cooperative Extension, and BOCES. Oh, thank you very much. And all in all, there was about 30 people there or so. We had a very productive all-day kickoff where we tried to identify key markers for success for the project, areas of concern to all the different tenants of the space. We tried to further define the project goals and some of the spaces within the building and adjacencies in particular, so that we could then move on and try to develop a floor plan that's going to work for everyone. Between May 5th and June 1st, that's about 4 weeks, we pushed ahead and got a lot of design done during that time. We worked with all the different stakeholders actually individually to come up with a floor plan that would meet everybody's needs. Essentially, you send out a wish list, something we call a space definition forms, and everybody, all the tenants, the stakeholders, they fill out what they would like to see, what their needs are, specific to their usage of the different spaces. Then we take that and put that into a floor plan. When we did that, the initial floor plan laid out at about 24,000 square feet. Well, we knew the project had to be at 22,000 square feet, so in that 4 weeks we worked individually with each of the stakeholders and with Lewis County to make that a more efficient floor plan. We got back down to 22,000 square feet. By finding some spaces that could be public use or shared use spaces, everybody needs a conference room, for example, things like that. Within that 4 weeks, we put out a review package that went out to all the key stakeholders that I just mentioned and to Lewis County for their review. We knew that schedule was one of the key markers for success on this project. If you look from May 5th, we had about 8 months to do the entire design and construction of the facility. Just for perspective, you usually have at least twice that even on fast-tracked education projects. So this was a very aggressive schedule. So our project approach, we broke it down into 2 different contracts. We identified that structural steel was going to be on our critical path and one of the long lead items. And this will be important for you to remember later that at that time and still today, most of the steel manufacturers will quote you 8 to 10 weeks for delivery of steel on site from a release of order, which means the shop drawings went in, they've been reviewed, they've been approved, and then after they get fabricated, you still have 2 to 2.5 months before the steel gets on site. So it was really important that that package went out early. Now the interesting part here is that contract 1 was site utilities and structural. Contract 2 included the architectural. But you need to know what's in the building to design the building frame. So we actually pushed the architecture package ahead while we were moving contract 1 forward so that we would be able to meet our goals. And what you see up here in the dates, those dates were basically set in May. And we've hit all of our key deadlines, and you'll see later that some of them were actually a little bit ahead of the game. So about 3 weeks after the review set, so 7 weeks from the time we had a project kickoff, contract 1 was on the street being bid. And as I said before, that was the site package, site utilities, and the entire structural package for the building. On that same day, we also submitted the contract 2 drawings, which were the rest of the finish out drawings, architectural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, life safety, communication. Those all went in for review on the 22nd as well. We received comments back and finalized those drawings 5 weeks later, and bid package 2 went out, or contract 2 went out for bid on the 26th of July. What is interesting to note, this is kind of the design line up here. This is the construction line or the contracting line. We actually received the bids back for contract 1 before we had the final drawings out for contract 2. What's really kind of a success story, or a small success story within that, is that you would expect there to have to be a lot of changes between the drawings, the structural drawings that went out so early, and the architectural drawings that went out actually after we received the bids back. But we haven't really had any major changes, and so that really tells to the amount of work that went in those first 4 weeks to make sure everything was coordinated. So contract 1 bids came in on the 18th of July. About a month later, the contract was awarded and construction actually began on the site work, site utilities and the structural. And that is actually a lot faster than a lot of public projects that I've been involved in get contracted. And that's a real feather in your cap, actually, to have gotten all of the documents in place and got that project contracted in a time to let the contractor get moving forward. On the 24th of August, we received contract 2 bids in. That's the remainder of the project. That's all the finish out. That's the building envelope. That's all the mechanical and electrical and the things I mentioned before. Again, about a month later, we had everything in place, and actually last Tuesday, after our progress meeting for our contract 1 progress meeting, we had the kickoff for contract 2. So everything is moving very quickly, and you'll see that when we talk about construction progress in a little bit. The real success story of the week is actually that today they finished hanging the last beam of the structural steel skeleton. So they received that steel on site last Tuesday, and just for perspective again, that's 10 weeks after the bids were received for the structural drawings. Now remember when I said that structural steel generally quotes an 8 to 10 week lead time from release of order. We got steel delivered to the site 10 weeks after the bids came in, not 10 weeks after they started construction. So everybody's been working together as quickly as possible, and we're actually a couple weeks ahead when it comes to steel framing. Brief contract summary. Like I said before, we let it out in 2 main contracts. Contract 1, which was the early site structural package, and contract 2, which was the remainder of the building. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Wick's law and New York State contracting law, when you have a public facility like this, you actually have to break that up into several prime contracts. So that's why you see 4 contracts as part of contract 2. Contract 2A is general construction, 2B is building electrical, 2C is mechanical and heating and ventilation and air conditioning. Contract 2D is plumbing. So there's 5 total contracts, but only 3 prime contractors. DC Building Systems was awarded both of the general construction contracts, and Lawman Heating and Cooling was the low bid for both of the plumbing and the mechanical and HVAC contracts. So that actually makes it very convenient for us to have 3 prime contractors. Is a lot easier to coordinate on a project that's fast like this. The next few slides are some pictures for those of you who haven't been out to the site. I would actually encourage you, if you haven't been out to the site, go out by the site, take a look at it. If you go out today and you go out next week, it's a completely different site. The progress is moving ahead so quickly. It would have been all flat last week, and now you actually see the building starting to take shape. This was taken probably back the end of July or early August. This is actually your highway department. And I should back up because there's one key thing that I did not mention that is that really helped move the project forward. Right here between contract 1 bids being received and when DC Building Systems actually mobilized to the site, Lewis County Highway Department actually did quite a bit of work installing some of the water line extension and doing some of the rough grading and moving some of that site work ahead. Those items were removed from the contract 1 drawings as something that was going to be performed by the owner, and that's really helped us get to where we are today. Over here, trying to go forward. Well, it doesn't seem to be wanting to show pictures. I can take some questions right now while we're getting that set of what I've talked about so far, if anybody has any immediate questions.
What was the credit for the work that our highway department did?
In dollars? I don't have that right with me. I do have the estimate together, and I know that we did put a dollar amount to it, but I don't. What's that? About $500,000. I'd say. You're welcome. And actually, some of that you actually receive fill material for a lot less expensive than a private contractor can get. So you gain some efficiencies there as well by taking advantage of some of the public contracts on fill material.
Well, I'd say we'd save the $500,000 is what came off the
Right,
project.
yeah, that's right.
That's not what it cost us.
No,
I don't
no, certainly not.
Well, he
It was
answered the
much
question
less.
I asked.
Okay.
I asked the savings.
Okay.
So this is your highway department here installing the water line extension right out in front of the Maple Ridge Center. This was, like I said, probably back at the end of July or early August. I don't think this video is going to work. So we do have the video. Part of putting in the utilities here, for those of you who aren't familiar with the site, there's shallow bedrock up here, but it's not consistent and it's not at a constant depth. So we actually, well, you'll see here in a sec. This is a blasting operation that took place. So the reason I put that in is I think because it's a little underwhelming, right? But a lot of people, when they hear that we're blasting, they think like the movies. You see, rocks and shards of metal flying every which way. Blasting for construction operations is a lot more controlled than that, and it actually is a very effective way to get loosen up some of that bedrock so that we can dig that water line down to the depth that it needs to be, because it needs to be installed below frost. We found bedrock as shallow as 1 foot down from top of grade and as deep as 13 feet down. So that was one of the challenges that we had to get past on the construction side, is that we did not have a uniform depth to bedrock. But we've moved on past that, and it didn't really slow anybody up. This picture is about a month ago. What you're looking at there is the structural select fill under the building slab, placed and compacted. Following that, the footings and the perimeter wall of the main building were constructed, and then immediately following that, we were ready to receive steel. And as I mentioned before, steel got delivered to the site last Tuesday. This was a picture that one of our structural engineers took on Wednesday morning, and it's just to show you what the building looked like Wednesday morning. There was a couple columns in the air, but maybe a couple columns and a couple beams in the morning. Throughout the day, DC Building Systems got a lot of work done very quickly. The building started to take shape. By the end of the day, a large majority of the framing was in place, and actually this morning, which is Thursday morning, right? So just a day and a half, the last steel beam went in place, and that's a picture from this morning of that final steel beam going into place. So you can start to see the building taking shape from what the image of it that you were all presented back during the design phase. You can also see, if you have sharp eyes, in the back you see those bar joists starting to go up there. The remainder of the bar joists should be up by the end of the week, with roof decking starting next week. And like I said before, we're, depending on which iteration of the construction schedule and project schedule you looked at, we're between 2 to 3 weeks ahead of schedule with the general construction of contract 1. And hopefully by the end of the calendar year, this is what you're going to see when you go out there. So you can start to see it taking shape. So as far as the construction schedule and the milestones, when I put this together, I was trying to create a big picture so that you could see, without all the minutia of a critical path schedule like we're following, some of the major milestones that we've hit and some that we still have to come. This is kind of a conglomeration because, like I said, we had a project schedule that we put together way back in May, and that project schedule included design and construction. And we, to a large extent, both the items that we had direct control over, you know, the design phase milestones, we hit all of those. But even the construction phase milestones, which we did not necessarily have direct control over from a design standpoint, some of that's up to the contractor, they've either hit those milestones or they've exceeded them. The critical path schedule that we received back from the contractors, it almost mirrored identically the project schedule that we created way back in May before we even had a building. So things have really been working very smoothly. So far to date, we've reviewed and approved somewhere around 120 shop drawings or construction product submittals. You know, in a matter of a month, that's a lot of administrative work to have taken place to be pushing the procurement as quickly as possible to maintain the construction schedule. Foundation was completed at the end of September on the 28th, and you know, right around the same time, all the underslab plumbing, the oil water separator was installed, and actually the contract 2 construction kind of officially began. Last Tuesday was our official construction kickoff, and now we've really started seeing a lot of construction submittals, shop drawings. We see the mobilization kicking into high gear. We expect to start seeing some of our contractors, specifically our electrical contractor, hopefully later this week, but at the latest probably by early next week. So things are, like I said, moving along pretty quickly. I put 10.5 down there for steel erection complete. As of today, the main steel members are in place, but by the end of the week, all those bar joists will be in place as well, and they'll be ready to start receiving roof deck. I talked to DC Builders this morning. They confirmed that we should be receiving the cold form steel, the metal studs to enclose the building. We should receive those on Monday, and they're going to start framing up the exterior walls on Monday, again ahead of schedule. The garage foundation is, I put 10.8 was the schedule, but we're basically complete with the garage foundation as well, and they're going to move right on to start putting up masonry once they have the slab in place, which I think will be next week. By the end of October, the garage or the storage facility out behind the main structure the structural pieces should be complete. That's the foundation, the masonry, the wood trusses, and the plywood roof deck and plywood siding, along with the majority of the sidewalks and miscellaneous concrete that's already being pushed ahead right now, around the building. By the beginning of November or before, I'm told from DC Builders that they'll have the building closed in, and then right now we're on track to still be substantially complete by the end of the calendar year. So somebody asked how long this presentation was going to go. That's my last slide. I have plenty of time for questions, as I'm sure there's going to be plenty. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview, and then either Frank or myself, we can field any questions that you might have.
Next presentation. Do we have your slides?
The electronic version of it.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the update, because we got 3 new people on here that weren't part of the original project, and I was kind of the one that asked you to come in, and I appreciate it very much.
Cool.
Anyone from the audience have any questions?
So electrical going good then? Is that going to be on schedule?
Yeah, we spoke with Amp Electric. Specifically, they got together with DC Builders. At our kickoff meeting last Tuesday, we had a little powwow to talk about who's going to control what out of the space. And right now, that's what's going on. There's a lot of people going to be working all in the same space over the next couple of months. And so DC has really kind of taken the lead in identifying the different laydown areas and coordinating the work. But even though they're all separate prime contracts, they're taking the lead in coordinating the work between the different trades. And I think Amp Electric is a lot more comfortable now that they've worked with DC on the project schedule.
There's going to be progress meetings every other Tuesday, is that what I understand?
Yes, sir. So we have full progress meetings every other Tuesday. And then as we move forward, right now the intention is to have a stand-up coordination meeting on the off Tuesdays. Really, it'll probably happen on a daily basis, but more formalized stand-up coordination meetings on the off Tuesdays. When we start to get into closer to the November timeframe, December, when we're really coordinating the interior work, maybe we'll need to meet more frequently and adjust to weekly. But right now we're meeting every other week.
And then those are at 10 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
So if somebody wanted to attend 10 o'clock on a Tuesday,
Here?
No, it's at the highway garage.
Oh, the highway
In the
garage.
conference room.
Okay.
It's right down the road from the project site, so it was convenient to be able to go right up.
Yeah.
Ways and Means Committee has the full schedule, we can send it to everyone.
Oh, that'd be great.
One of the other things that I forgot to mention, if anybody cares, some of the stuff that you guys are familiar with, some of the permits we had to go through for this. Just to run down the list, we submitted for a railroad crossing permit for 2 of those railroad crossings on East Road. We submitted for a speedies permit and a stormwater pollution prevention plan of the DEC. Special use permit with the Town of Loudonville Planning Board, and went to a couple planning board meetings there. Coordinated with National Grid and the Department of Health submittal for the water line extension, and then the sanitary sewer extension to be approved as well. So in addition to the drawings and specifications and the contract packages that I discussed earlier, there were a lot of smaller packages that had to go out quickly because some of these coordination items, like the special use permit, they only meet every month. So you have to get on the agenda very early in the project, and we were able to work with them, and largely it's been a very collaborative process with everybody involved. So,
Thank you, Chuck.
you're welcome.
Where are you started, Chuck?
What's that?
Where's your headquarters?